Hi, my name is Pat Kittle. I'm the supervisor in Independence Township. And I want to apologize for not providing you the updates over here for the past couple of weeks. We've been really busy trying to put together our final plans for the road project. And I thought today that I'd spend a couple of minutes running a presentation by you that we just presented to our board last Wednesday. Again, it'll probably give you a good understanding of where we're at, what the costs are, what the sources of funding are, some of the issues and opportunities that we encountered, and again, just to let you know where we're at. So the bid will actually be awarded to the contractor on this Thursday at the Road Commission Board of Commissioners meeting. The winner of the bid was a company called Angelo Iafredi, and while I don't have a firm date yet when it's going to start, it is looking like it's going to be mid to late May. So with that, why don't we just start with the presentation, and and then what I'll do is actually address some of the questions that were asked in the board meeting and let you know what some of the options were and where we ended up. So with that, back in January of this year, we had costs for the project that were estimated at about $4.1 million. This was a little higher than what we had been working with for the past 2 years. Most of the increases that came in were estimates of easement acquisition. And again, it's pretty basic as far as where we were. We had our funding plan all put together. But I tell you what, on March 24th, our world turned upside down. As you can see on the next slide, when the actual cost of the program came in closer to $5 million, needless to say, we were all shocked. We were aware of some of the changes in terms of project scope, but we weren't aware of some of the big increases in the construction costs. So as you can see on the next slide, again, you start to take a look at that $4.1 million original estimate against the 5.069 revised estimate that came in with the bid. You're looking at about a 23% increase in terms of the actual program cost. And like I said, this one caught us all off guard. But when you start to delve in, and that's what we did between last March 24th and the board meeting Wednesday, is start to figure out why. And a lot of it had to do with added program requirements that came in from MDOT and RCOC, new construction safety standards, a limited number of qualified contractors who are actually able to do this work, and I'll get into more of that later, and just general cost increases. That is the cost of asphalt, the cost of concrete, the cost of guardrail, the cost of structural steel, the cost of labor. All of that stuff has been going up faster than our consultant HRC and the Road Commission could get their arms around. So one of the big increases that cost like $349,000 was actually enhancements that came in from MDOT and RCOC. And some of these you could see and we were aware of. Again, what was not initially spec'd out were some of the things that had to do with just like safety guardrail for the construction workers. The older standard was using cones. That's what was bid. You can see there's a $21,000 bump for concrete barriers, and that's just the right thing to do. Another big one was $78,000, and that's the actual mill thickness of the entrance ramp for northbound 75 at Sashabaw. The new standard is the ramp has to be constructed of the same grade and materials as the actual roadway. We really didn't understand that because there are thousands and thousands of more vehicles that will actually travel the highway on a daily basis than our on-ramp. But that's a new standard, and that was a $78,000 increase. So again, this stuff actually started to add up a little bit. And we knew about these changes moving into late February, but we still weren't sure of the overall cost. So as the next slide shows, when you start to take a look at the 4.1, then you add the $349,000. Compare that against the $5 million cost, you're looking at about a 14% increase, versus what was bid from 2 years ago. And while it's still a chunk of change, you can start to make some sense out of it. So what happened on March 24th, that's when the actual bid opening was. And there was only one contractor that got their bid in on time, and that was the Iafredi company. There was a second bidder that tried to submit, and the ironic part is he was actually late for the bid opening because he got tied up into construction traffic. And what was really frustrating with us is just, you start to wonder what was wrong with the bid. Why only one guy, or in this case two, but one was late. And you start to take a look at the environment that was taking place before the economic downturn. And this was the list of the contractors that were available. And as you can see, there was 13 or 14 on the sheet. But after the economic downturn hit, a lot of these guys went bankrupt, moved to other states. Some of them bought an island someplace and just retired. But again, we're down to a 54% decrease. and we're looking at a remaining 7 guys. So again, when you start taking a look at the road environment and the construction environment and the amount of work that is out there, and granted, while there isn't a ton of money with such a limited number of contractors, these guys are very, very busy. The next slide starts to showcase what happens with some of the bids that came in during the February, March, April timeframe. And again, you can see where ours came in at 3.4 versus 4.0. That's about about an 18% hit. It seems like every bid that was coming in was running somewhere between 26, 18, 18, 8, 14, 12, 18, coming in for almost a 15% increase in what was initially spec'd out. So again, a combination of unit price increases, labor issues, labor availability, and I think some of it is just, the contractors had a lot of lean years when they were losing money, and this is probably an opportunity for them to recoup a little bit of their profitability. So the source of fundings would be what would be on the next slide. And again, when we were first thinking around this thing, we were looking at having to pay for a portion out of future tri-party funds coming in from the CIA. And again, just running through the numbers, again, the McLaren still is committed to the $1.5 million. The tri-party contribution, that would be from the Road Commission and the county, was $1.6 million. The Category A funding of $672,000 was coming in because of the Magneti Marelli moving into this community and all of the incremental manufacturing jobs that they brought in at $9,000 a head was an incentive from the state, to compensate us, to allow for future road improvements. So that was huge. We had about $332,000 in our fund balance, which got us to the $4 million that we needed to cover the cost of the program. But again, you got to remember that of that 1.6, 1/3 of that contribution is ours. So again, take that $538,000 against what was projected at the time of $790,000 worth of CIA TIF contribution. We were actually going to be running with about a $252,000 surplus to kind of handle contingencies and things of that nature. But what happened once we actually got the bid, the new revised numbers, again, were kind of shocking. Again, and this is how we were going to pay for it. So again, McLaren was still good for 1.5. The tri-party went from 1.6 to 1.94 million dollars, and that was because the RCOC, in conjunction with the county, was going to award us 3 incremental future years of tri-party to help offset some of these costs. The Road Commission stepped up and picked up a lot of their in-kind engineering costs and a bunch of repaving expense to the tune of $348,000. Again, the $332,000 was a fund balance, which got us up to almost $4.8 million of funds against the $5.069 cost, which left us with about a $276,000 unfunded opportunity. But again, you take your tri-party contribution, the unfunded got us to $932,000 that we were going to have to find. Again, against future TIF money, it was increased from $790,000 up to $900,000. The $790,000 was from a couple of years ago, and what we found out is the commercial real estate market is starting to flatten and then actually start to pick up a little bit. And with some of the new properties that have been put into the township, in the actual Corridor Improvement Authority, these are the incremental funds, and this has been validated with our assessing department. So that left us with about a $23,000 shortfall, which is manageable. But again, the concern is that there really wasn't any contingency money. So again, if something happened that would have cost us a couple of $100,000, that would have been a direct hit to the fund balance, again, which really wasn't acceptable to anybody. So our planner, Dick Carlisle, and myself went down to talk to Dave Vanderveen, Brooks Patterson, and Dan Hunter from the Economic Development Corporation, and they are willing to allow us to extend our CIA corridor program beyond its 2021 deadline to carry it out a couple of extra years if we do run into problems, and we do need the money. So there would not be any sort of direct hit to our fund balance. The next slide just kind of backs into the same numbers, but what it does allow us to start to back out all of the in-kind services and payments from other people to find out just how much money we're going to need from the township and to borrow from our general fund and pay that back from between now and 2021 out of TIF capture. And again, just rattling through the numbers, and the big one is right down there, the $1.141 million. That would be our net cash that we would need out of fund balance, and we would transfer that in. We have plenty in there. We've got over $5.7 million in there. And again, so that is not going to hurt our cash flow or operational needs at all. And again, that would be paid off in 16, 17, 18. We'd get $218,000 in the tri-party funds. And again, as we move forward in just future tax increment funding capture coming out of the TIF, again, we would get to our $900,000 and get us to where we need to get to. So there was a lot of heated discussion in the board meeting. You know, should we do this? Shouldn't we? What's the big hurry? I don't like the fact that there was only one bidder. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of run through some of the questions that were asked and kind of just give you the summary of what happened out of it. Again, why only one bidder? What was wrong with our contract? I did go out and contact 3 of the 7 contractors with Cadillac, Ajax, Dan's, as well as Iafrades. Well, I didn't talk to Iafrades. And they all were aware of it. And one of those 3 did actually make the bid submission, but they were late. And as such, the rules are the rules. But in talking with them, one of their vice presidents actually called me back and says, well, you know, Pat, well, I can appreciate your concern, but we wouldn't have got the bid anyway. And I says, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, we were higher. And I says, well, how much higher? He says, well, I'm not at liberty to say, but let's just put it this way. We were considerably higher. So, and again, as you can see, that's, you know, having a couple of guys bid. The old days, there used to be 5, 6 guys bidding on a project. You know, not so much today with the reduced competition. You know, did you go back and negotiate with Iafrades? The RCOC process is, and what they've established over the years is when they put these out to competitive bid, they expect the lowest bid possible coming back, and that is what is awarded. If they started, their words, if they started to go back and start to work these guys before bids were actually awarded, you know, they're worried about guys actually padding bids, knowing that they're going to be asked to squeeze some money out. But one of the things that they do actually do once a bid is awarded is go back and what they refer to as value engineering and work with the contractor and just say, you know, what could we do differently to help save some money? What could we repackage? What could we retime? Things of that nature. And I guess the way the contracts are set up and the RCOC process is, you know, whatever dollar amount is worked up that could be saved, that is split 50-50 between who was actually making the purchase and the vendor. So while not ideal, you know, particularly coming from the automotive sector, it seems to work. And, you know, it's a model that the Road Commission has been using for years. How did the future TIF capture go up $110,000? I think I addressed that a little earlier. Again, with some of the added commercial properties, with some of the economic growth that we're seeing through, you know, increased property values. The 790 projection was made when things were still sliding down as far as commercial values. And again, now that we're starting to see a little bit of uptick, you know, we were able to get this increase. Another question was asked is, you know, have we asked McLaren and DTE for more money? You know, was brought up several times that they didn't see DTE as a contributor, you know, for the intersection project. And McLaren was initially on the hook for $1 million to help us with the Sashabaw-Walden intersection. When we started to take a look at the entire package of the intersection and the interchange, I did approach them and ask them to reevaluate their position, and if they could provide us with, well, I asked for $2 million. We came to an agreement on $1.5 million. And so, you know, did I go back to them? Yes, they are giving us $500,000 more than what they were originally obligated to under the initial agreement with the township. So, and they were very clear at that time that, you know, that is it. We did not ask DTE for money. They had committed $600,000 to the North Sashabaw project, which is still on our radar screen. And if I had asked them for $300,000 to apply to this project, yes, I would have spent $300,000 less in TIF money, but then I would have had $300,000 less for the future project. So again, we just kind of stayed where we were. We're also in some negotiations with DTE on some expansion that they want to do. And under the advice of council, we were recommended to just, you know, let's just leave this sleeping dog lie, and you know, we'll make good on getting the DTE contribution when we start working the North Sashabaw project. And then the last question is, you know, what's the big hurry on this? You know, why don't we just go out and rebid it and for 16 work? It isn't like the bridge is falling down. And Dick Carlisle got up and gave a couple of pretty good explanations on this. It says, as far as, the economic opportunity that we would lose as a township. His 40 years of work and research and in collaborating with other planners is that, for every dollar that you invest in your infrastructure, that you can typically expect to get $5 back on a return as far as economic growth. So when you start to take a look at a $5 million road project, and maybe $25 million in economic impact downstream, you're going to want a piece of that pie as fast as you can. And then the rationale for bidding, moving forward, let's say rebidding the project, and again, the 2 or 3 months that it would take to get all that done and processed and everything communicated, we'd then slip into the 2016 construction period. And with what we've seen over the past couple of years with the increase in the price of asphalt and the way that has been increasing, even though oil has been decreasing in price, we weren't sure how the contractors were going to hedge their bets. We knew that they weren't going to bid lower than what the prices were right now. Same for labor, same for concrete, same for steel, same for all of the components that go into building such a complex project as this intersection and interchange. The consensus was that we're not going to be saving any money, and if we do, it's going to be very, very minimal at best. So we kind of know the devil we've got versus the one that we don't. And again, we have the funding model. And so again, what we then did is just, kind of pose 4 scenarios, to the board. And, the first being accept the bid as is, rebid the entire project, rescope the project, or just kill a project in its entirety. And number 4 was immediately taken off the table. Killing the project made no sense. We had $600,000 in sunk cost to develop the plans and all the engineering specs so that this thing could go to bid. Doing that didn't seem to make a lot of sense. Then on top of the $600,000, we would have to pay McLaren back the $300,000 that they've given us already, so we would then be $1 million out of round. And then we would put our Category A funds at risk of the $672,000. Again, that was awarded to us at $9,000 an incremental head. That pool of money that the state did own to manage that was about $70 million at one time. It's now down to $2 million. So it was virtually guaranteed that we wouldn't get the $9,000 if we were able to apply for category. It would be somewhat less, and again, would probably cost us a couple of $100,000. Rescoping the project, again, to get it down to our initial spec of $4 million. Again, changing the scope of the project would have put the Category A funds at risk. This thing was sold and packaged as it is in its entirety. And it's not my rule, it's the state. But again, we didn't think that was a prudent course of action. And then again, when we would start to rebid, we would be pushing things into 16, and with unit prices going up, as I mentioned earlier, on all of the things that they are, we didn't think there would be a savings there as well. Again, rebidding the project, and choices 1 and 2 were the ones that we spent the majority of the time. And again, what we ultimately decided, as you can see on the next slide, this thing was approved 7-0 to commence with the project. Never an easy decision to make, when you're working with other taxpayers' money. Again, this whole government bidding is a lot different than the private sector. But I think that we got, based on everything that's going on in the market right now, I think our prices were in line, higher than what we wanted, but in line with what was going on in the marketplace at the present time. And I think that hedging our bet and moving forward right now was the prudent thing to do. The next slide, again, I just put it in here. You've seen this before, was in the Township Times. Again, we've got a very unique construction project because, as you can see, with all of the complexity, with all of the different colors and the timing of this, there isn't a lot of what's called production work for one of the contractors. Our particular project right here, there's a lot of asphalt, there's a lot of steel, there's a lot of grading, there's a lot of intersection work. Again, it's not like a contractor is coming in and repaving 25 miles of I-75, where they can bring in one of these big machines and do 2 or 3 lanes at a time and basically wrap a mile or so off a day. There's a lot of hands-on work, there's a lot of specialty work, there's a lot of work that's going to be subbed out to subcontractors. And again, so from a profitability standpoint, it isn't the most lucrative type of work versus what some of the general production work would be. So again, I do know that this decision is going to be made this Thursday by the Board of Commissioners. They will vote to move forward with this based upon our recommendation. And might I add, our Corridor Improvement Authority members were also voted unanimous to move forward with this. So A lot of really smart people, a lot of local people in the community who've been here for a long time, thought that this was the best course of action, and that's where we're moving. So the one thing I do promise to you is that we will communicate every which way we can. Again, our township board meetings that are available on our website. This particular update right here, I've got other documents on the home page on our website. It's very clearly marked that you can see what's going on, where the cost came from. And as I start to get specific dates from the Road Commission, we will be sending postcards out to every resident and business in the community, so that if we're going to close a road or we're going to shrink 3 lanes down to 1, you will know about it a week before that it happens, so that you can make alternative transportation plans and try to get to where you're going, you know, without too much inconvenience. There's going to be a ton going on this summer. I know I'm going to get a culvert replaced on Mabee Road down by Clintonville. I know there's going to be work done on I-75 as they start to fill up all of those cracks and repave it. And then we're going to have our own little special slice of heaven here on Sashabaw as we start to rebuild our interchange and our intersection. So your patience is going to be appreciated. Again, make sure when you start to see those little yellow postcards, you take note. Again, we're actually getting some additional LED signage that we can put out on the roads, again, to give people an advance notice of alternate routes, and to when, let's say, like the northbound ramp at Sashabaw is going to be closed, because it will be shut down for a couple weeks, but again, you will know about it. So please bear with us. We're going to do the best we can, and the work is supposed to be done by November. And again, from a throughput standpoint, this is supposed to improve the throughput in the community somewhere between 20 to 25% based on all of the modeling. And while not an ideal solution, because we're still not fixing the bridge, and that adds another $10, $15 million to the equation that we will never be able to afford. This is something that has been in the plans for close to 10 years, and we're finally able to get our act together, get all the funding sources, and we're going to take the opportunity to move forward. So with that, any questions, any comments, feel free to call me in the office at any time, and we'll try to help you best we can. Thanks for watching.